It has been 5 weeks since we took the Daytona out, and man, it feels good. I take this bike out and I have fun every single time, and I do tell myself when I get home that I'm not going to leave it 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and then before I know it, yeah, it's been 5 weeks. And it's a real shame because I have so much fun on this bike every single time we go out. But I do have one major problem with this bike. So, what is my problem with this bike? And I'm going to say it in that way because it may just be my problem. I'm sure, whilst I'm not the only one with the same problem, it could very well be specific to me. So this is how it goes. Every single time I think about taking out this bike, I get really excited. In fact, last night when I was thinking about taking out this bike, I got really excited. And then we come to take the bike out, we get all dressed up and we get all excited again, and I'm like a kid at Christmas. And because I'm like a kid at Christmas, that tells me that this is definitely still the bike for me. And out we go, and we make ourselves that same promise again, you know, the promise that goes, we're not going to leave it 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. And out we go, and I think, damn, this bike is so much fun. Don't get me wrong, my 125 certainly still serves a very good and very valid purpose, and it's an incredibly comfortable bike, but something like this just hits different, and a lot of that is the power. I'm not gonna shy away from it and pretend that I'm that sensible, because whilst I am sensible, I sometimes feel it dips a little bit when I get onto this bike, but in a sensible way, ironically. My point is, I have fun on this bike, and it's fun the likes of which I don't get to have on the 125. So we're out, we're having fun, and we get back, we put the bike away, big massive grin on my face, and I've got a bad back. Yeah, shocking headline there, I'm sure. Guy rides sports bike and gets a bad back. Like I said, I'm not the only one, not the first one, won't be the last one. They're not always the most comfortable of bikes, these. And I don't mean these Daytonas, because this is the only one I've ever ridden. I mean these sports bikes. You know, I'm a sports bike guy, I'm 44, and this one is giving me a bad back. And it does kind of detract a little bit from the enjoyment of the bike, you know, like I want to take the bike out all the time, but then I have to accept the fact that I'm gonna get a bad back. And so I take a step back and I look at the bike, I look at the riding position, imagining how I look on the bike. You know, how leant forward am I, you know, on this bike, and how does that compare to my other sports bike? And ironically, the riding positions of the two bikes are very similar, only the other one doesn't give me a bad back, and I am consistently getting a bad back with this bike but not with the other one. And so, like I say, it unfortunately makes me a little more reluctant to take this bike out. But here we are, we're out with Lauren. I've got a grin on my face, unsurprisingly, and that's the odd thing about this bike. She gives me a bad back and puts a grin on my face it's a weird contradiction. Now, the source of my bad back could simply be because she's a sports bike and it's from me, you know, you've got the hunched over riding position. So it could simply be that. But also the suspension on this bike is, well, it's rock hard. And I don't mean rock hard like there's no suspension. Yes, of course there's suspension travel there. But it's certainly a lot firmer than what I'm used to. Now, when I first started riding this bike last year and I realised just how stiff the suspension was, I promptly started to make some slight adjustments, but within the confines of my own ability, because I'm not a suspension expert. But one thing that I did notice was this spring down here, it was wound all the way in, meaning that it wasn't springing as it should have done, and it gave that rock hard feel and the you know, the bone crushing feel to riding this bike. And then we get to the front forks, which have two adjusters up here and another adjuster on the bottom of the forks there, and they're for your preload, compression and rebound. And again, I'm not an expert, I don't know what I'm doing with these settings, so I simply reset them to the factory soft settings. But even on the factory soft settings, the suspension on this bike is just too firm for me, and it would appear as though I'm not the only one. I've done a little bit of research and a lot of people are saying that these bikes are just quite firm on their suspension. Now, I have asked myself, should I have bought an R6? Because that was another bike that I was looking at. But of course the R6, it's another sports bike, and let's be honest, a lot of R6s are, well, they're turned into track bikes, aren't they? My mate calls them race bikes with lights. I don't see the Daytona 675 as being much different, to be fair. A lot of these end up on the track. So had I bought an R6, or were I to trade this bike for an R6, am I just trading one problem for the same exact problem, just on a different bike? Probably. And then I think to myself, well, maybe I should have gone with the Street Triple. That was another bike that I was looking at. You know, it's same engine as this, but it's more upright. It's not a sports bike, you know, so you'll have a much, I'd imagine you'd have a much more comfortable ride on that bike because you're far more upright, you're not hunched over. Maybe it would save my back, but you know, is it going to come with the same suspension? It'll come with the same engine. So this year, I'd say this year we're going to be on the lookout for a suspension specialist in Devon, a suspension specialist that I can go to and have this bike set up properly. Someone that knows what they're doing, someone that will tell me actually if I need different springs, because I have heard that the rear spring on these is a progressive spring and that you need a linear spring. I don't know, but we'll find ourselves a suspension specialist, we'll get the bike set up. If the springs need changing, we'll get them changed, and then hopefully we can really start to enjoy this gorgeous bike.